The views and opinions expressed on the show are those of the guests or hosts, and not necessarily those of the advertisers, networks, platforms, or stations. Warning that the content of the show may not be suitable for all audiences, and that viewer discretion is advised. The show does not intend to provide medical, legal, or financial advice, and viewers or listeners should consult with a professional before making any decisions based on the information presented.
Everybody, the Paranormal Intelligence Agency Radio Live. We're the radio show broadcasting from 300 feet deep in an abandoned nuclear missile silo somewhere lost in the post-apocalyptic badlands of the Dakota Territories. And I'm joined, as usual, by the paranormal crime-fighting duos Daisy and the Sundance Kid are riding shotgun tonight. High above us, somewhere roaming about, are the crazy human mutant monsters from the movie The Hills Have Eyes. So we caught a glimpse of them the other day. They are grotesque indeed, and hunkered down here in the missile silo with the crime-fighting duo. I'm able to kind of analyze what's going on the upper world. And this week, it was going through my head all of the crazy canine cryptids in cryptozoology land. So I decided to make that tonight's topic, the crazy world of canine cryptids. That's going to be our main topic this evening. We'll be discussing everything from the dire wolf to the Shura Warrican to the, Dogman and beyond. So what creatures lurk in the shadows, watching us all the time? That's what we're going to be talking about. Was able to actually come across some undeniable Dogman footage in the years I spent out there in the field. This actually came from another field investigator who didn't know they had even captured the images. We'll be talking about that tonight. We'll be talking about the Lakewood Lichen case and a few other Dogman cases I had the honor to work on with the late, great J.C. Johnson. And also, we've got some few just kind of updates in the paranormal news world. For example, the missing general that I have been discussing, the Major General McKesson, is still missing. So as far as I know, he has been disappeared, and so has a female rocket scientist who was somehow tied to the general, who also disappeared under the exact same circumstances. Few items missing from their home, indicating they may have gone hiking. No, nothing else. They just vanished. And the lady vanished long before the general did, the scientist. That's interesting. So I wouldn't say long, but before him by a number of months. And then he goes missing. I wonder what the two of them collectively knew together. And in this day and age of Donald Trump saying, release the UFO files to the Pentagon, and all of the UFO congressional hearings and the whistleblowers and the scientists talking on all the podcasts dealing with the UFO phenomenon. Might the late general, because I don't believe he's alive anymore, but might the late general have known something he was going to try to tell all book about? That's what I suspect, and I suspect that fact became known. He probably applied to be able to release the material, because that's what you have to do when you're talking about classified type material, and that probably was enough for the boys in black, the so-called men in black, the ex-protect guys that are the embedded intelligence agents and assassins in the United States aerospace industry that have been embedded ever since Roswell, are the ones. They are the ex-protect. They are able to operate in such a way that they can take these people out and do it without leaving a single clue as to what happened to them. Many investigators, including dark journalists and myself, believe that it was ex-protect that probably was also responsible for the Kennedy assassination. That might sound insane to some people, but not when we have a memo from Alan Dulles, the active CIA director at the time, stating that they could not allow Lancelot to get his hands on the UFO files. That was a semi-burned memo found in his fireplace, which is very interesting. And Lancelot was the code name for Kennedy. Kennedy, a week before his assassination, requested all UFO files, and he had the intent of sharing them with the Soviet Union in an effort to achieve peace between the two. The idea was to introduce an outside force, an outside enemy, and say, look, let's work together on this phenomenon, and that way we can be peaceful. But the powers that be, the ex-protect guys, the United States aerospace industry, the dark, shadowy world, where that industry collides with the military machine, that world that collides with the military-industrial complex, and with military contracts. That's the dark world, the place where the stew for all of this conspiracy and active conspiracy takes place. And we're not conspiracy theorists on this show. We are conspiracy analysts, as the late, great Gore Vidal once said. We analyze actual conspiracies taking place in the world. But I digress. That kind of led us off in an interesting direction, but I suspect it was ex-protect, and so does many other ufologists that I'm familiar with. They all think that the good general has been done in, let's say. So, and we got interesting news with the new trip to the moon. It'll be interesting to see if they divulge any information. They will be in their path. They'll be going around to the dark side of the moon before they complete their mission. So it'll be interesting to see if they see any flashes of light or lit up cities or bases or anything like that. That would be fascinating, right? There should be cameras running at all times, but we know how that is. NASA is never a straight answer. So we'll see. We'll see how this whole thing goes with this new spacecraft that they have constructed, the Artemis 2. So that's also kind of paranormal in the news. Really, the paranormal also runs into the scientific world often, and that's kind of where we're at with the Artemis 2 mission. It's interesting, the Chinese did have a rover up there. I also often wonder what the rover discovered when it was up there, but now it's a race to see who can colonize the moon first and effectively weaponize space. That's really what it comes down to. I read an interesting book once upon a time about the invention of the gun and how that led to all kinds of breakthroughs in civilization. So that's interesting that we're kind of at a point where, we're seeing another example of that. We're seeing another example of warlike behavior, going to be what's responsible for us actually colonizing our moon. So, interesting parallax view on that, right? So, this week's been an interesting week in the markets. We do cover that because of its collision with the cyber prophecies and, the upswing of the long foretold Kali Yuga, the periodic planetary cyclical motion that we go through that takes us up through golden ages and back down around through dark ages. And we have come up out of the last dark age and beginning to see the light, as it were, of our galactic center. And with that, we get all kinds of biological benefits, but it doesn't come without a bit of a shock, and it doesn't come without many people sort of feeling a new weird energy taking effect around the planet and with biological life itself. You can kind of feel it in the people around you. At least I do. And it's interesting that, it's so noticeable. There is a thing called the Schumann resonance indicator, and that's something that many people are familiar with, but that would be an indication that you can kind of follow that, and whenever that pegs to the upside, that's always an indication of some kind of strange shock taking place to the human psyche, right? And that kind of coincides with a lot of the cyber prophecies foretold by the Webbot and Clip-Eye's algorithmic equations that were able to harness, if you will, the collective psychic energy of the human species by analyzing speech patterns. That's pretty cool stuff. And the place where science runs into the paranormal world, right? It's revealed many, many interesting insights into the materium around us. And a lot of those insights are coming true now, and I refer to them on this show as the cyber prophecies, and that's kind of what we're dealing with right now. We're seeing the emergence of so-called sci-fi worlds, something the Webbot prophesied a long time ago, and with that, you're probably going to see a lot of UFO secrets become known to the public, along with actual technology beginning to benefit the populace of the world that was back engineered from alien technology. You have to remember that everything starts off as a military invention or utilization of some kind, and then that technology tends to trickle down into society in a non-military way. For instance, night vision. Once upon a time, only the military had night vision. Now you can buy any kind of awesome night vision rifle scope you can possibly afford, right? They're out there, military quality. So thermal cameras, drones, you name it. We could go down the list. The list goes on and on and on of technology that started off with military applications, because that's always the way it works in society, and then it slowly trickles down. It won't be any different with the alien technology. It's just taken them a really long time to effectively weaponize it. That's really what we're down to with it. We're dealing, according to their testimony, with a technology which can bend time and space, and therefore reality, right? How do you begin to weaponize something like that? That's really kind of what's at the heart of them attempting to weaponize this thing. But presumably, if you can project or create your own gravity, you can create weapons of amazing destruction. And that's presumably what these craft are able to do. So we'll have to see how that progresses, the weaponization of alien technology. And if we're to listen to a lot of the insiders, the whistleblowers out there, they're indicating that these things are possibly, they're possibly interdimensional in nature. So it could be that we're actually in possession of something that didn't even originate in this reality matrix. That's hard to even wrap our brains around, isn't it? But it's true. So, but all of this was prophesied, and it's prophesied at the same time as major economic kind of upheaval takes place. The upheaval is basically the so-called death of the fiat currency system. I don't expect apocalyptic like stuff like entire banks imploding and that kind of thing. I think what you're seeing right now is them adapting to the new technologies that are out there and turning everything into digital. And I think that's going to allow them to evolve in such a way that you're not going to see an implosion of the old system as much as you're going to see an evolving of the old system into the new. That's kind of the way things work. Revolutions always become a mixture of the old and the new. History has proven that time and time again, and I don't think that this particular revolution will prove any different than that. The old powers that be just have a way of also evolving into the new powers that be. It's unfortunate for us that that's the case, but and basically we're at a place where we should begin to see massive change, and that's really kind of what we have been seeing, right? So the interesting thing is, and I'm kind of watching the markets as we talk here, you're seeing the United States dollar actually begin to weaken at a time when the cryptocurrency like Clarity bills about to go into active, they're about to pass that. If they pass the Clarity Act, that's going to open up a vast amount of like 401k kind of funds to flow in, and that kind of funds are tough to, they're tough to fight against when that kind of money flow comes in. It's interesting, but it's tough to fight that. It just absorbs selling pressure because it's wave after wave of retirement kind of money, and that may fulfill the prophecy of these things overtaking fiat currencies. So there is things in the works that are kind of like that, but that seemed to be a manifestation of those prophecies taking place, and a lot of the prophecies have to do with the revealing of secrets, and we are seeing a lot of that tend to take place as we're going forward in time. We have to remember that groups like the Future Forecasting Group, headed up by Dick Algeier, and really the best remote viewers that are out there in the world, is interesting because they blindly targeted a lot of the prophecies foretold by the webbot and ended up corroborating them using double-blind remote viewing. That's pretty good stuff if you're into paranormal information gathering or intelligence gathering. That's really good stuff. So, and where does that leave us right now? Well, we're kind of in a weird spot with the war in Iran. The war in Iran is causing the Straits of Hormuz to be congested because they're attacking the oil tankers that are sailing through there. That controls a huge percentage of the oil that goes around the world, not so much to us, but to Europe and Asia and Russia and places like that. And that in turn has pushed the price of oil way up. Probably not forever. But when that happens, it begins to affect the probabilities of interest rate cuts and hikes, right? Because it affects inflation. And interest rate cuts and hikes affect treasury yields, and treasury yields are what determine the value of the U.S. dollar. When the U.S. dollar goes up, gold goes down. When the US dollar goes down, gold goes up. Period. There is a perfect inverse relationship because the US dollar is the reserve currency around the world, and gold has always been used as a hedge against it. Nothing has changed in that world. So we are kind of at a spot where we're wise to monitor the strength and or lack of strength on the US dollar, because you're going to see a lot of indications by monitoring that the cyber prophecies are beginning to actually manifest and take effect, right? So that's kind of where we're at. We do have a lot of really interesting information in the paranormal world for people that have been paying attention to all of the scientists involved at the Pentagon and in the Pentagon's UFO programs, who have been on many podcasts. They're out there all the time talking. And if you're willing to listen, they have a lot to tell you about what they know. And I listen to what they have to say, so we'll be discussing a little bit of that. Gary Nolan, the great scientist from Stanford, is the gentleman that is investigating the ill health effects caused by interaction with UFOs. For some reason, they can't really ascertain. People that are involved with UFO research and who have even like sightings of UFOs end up coming down with exotic forms of cancer. Recently, I was notified that my good friend Nick Pope, the ex-Ministry of Defense agent for the UK's UFO program, has a terminal inoperable cancer, and I often wonder, and I'm sure he is too, whether or not that had to do with the fact that he was involved with UFO research and all of that for so long. Gary Nolan was actually contracted by the U.S. government to, in fact, study military personnel and U.S. government personnel involved in the UFO program that all began to exhibit the same kind of symptoms that you get from Havana syndrome. And we know now that Havana syndrome is actually caused by a auditory weapon that was developed by Russian intelligence. That is known to the U.S. government. It is some kind of acoustic weapon that is able to fry your brain using sound waves and cause massive, massive brain damage. And they have been targeting our intelligence agents around the world with this weapon, and it turns out that a lot of the same kind of damage that they see in Havana syndrome, they also see identically in people involved in the UFO research. Fascinating, right? On top of that, it was brought to my attention yet again the shape-shifting nature of the UFO phenomenon. It is a shapeshifter extraordinaire. The UFO phenomenon is a house of mirrors with a quicksand floor. It is full of misinformation, disinformation, intelligence operatives, and at the same time, it is telling us something really interesting about our reality. And by that, I mean the great ship sightings of the 1800s. You can go back in time and you can examine all of these different so-called alien encounters, and the technology that they seem to encounter seems to be just out of reach of where we are as a society. Just out of reach. And that's a weird aspect of this whole phenomenon, because in the 1800s, people had sightings of so-called airships. These were blimps or zeppelins that had figures that were riding around on big platforms underneath them, and it sounded like parties going on and all kinds of crazy stuff like that at a time when flight had never even been achieved. But we would achieve it very soon after that, and there would be blimps. How do we explain that kind of aspect of the overall UFO phenomenon? I don't know. But as soon as we come back after this break, we're going to examine the crazy world of canine cryptids.
All right, we're on radio break, Jack.
Ooh.
Great stuff. You know, last night I watched Richard Dolan. He was saying the same thing about USOs.
Oh, really?
Yep. And he actually put a scale together, so check what he's been doing.
Okay.
He's got some really interesting numbers, I should say, about them, especially about the USOs. And
he was saying, and he was indicating a shape-shifting aspect to them?
No, patterns about the technology. Okay. You know, you were talking about the technology just out of reach.
Yeah, that's what I mean.
Yeah, and he's also talked a little bit about, what was it? Oh, there was so much that he had in that that presentation. I'm not sure who he was doing it for, but it was really cool. But most of it talked about technology. Times, sighting times. Most sighting times now have switched from, like the 70s was equal day and night. Now it's switched to more night.
Interesting.
And he believes the reason for that with the USOs is because of our satellite systems didn't come online until like 70s or mid 70s.
Right. That makes sense. Well, and another indication we're dealing with a real phenomenon.
Yeah.
So.
And that they would be able to detect them easier in the daytime than at night because of the type of satellites they were.
Right.
Yeah, that it was really interesting.
That's really cool.
If you look him up, it was the very last one that he did. Should be. Unless he put one out today.
Yeah, I'll watch that tonight. So that'd be cool.
Yeah, it's a good 40 minutes plus. So make sure you have time for that.
Okay.
Most of the stuff I sent you is usually like 30 to 40 minutes long.
I'll check all that stuff out tonight because I'll be painting in my studio and I'll just be playing it all. So.
Yeah, a lot of it, especially, well, some of the stuff you might want to turn to see, you know, especially when it deals with the numbers and how he made his scales and things like that. Yeah, you know, I like Dolan, but not everything that Dolan does, you know. But I think he's onto something. I really do. I don't think anybody else has done anything like this or put that much research into it.
Exactly, and because he's like approaches it from a historian record.
Yes, I like him because of that. You know.
Yeah.
And he does. Yeah, he'll reach out sometimes, but you know, he's pretty solid on the ground most of the time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Most of the time, yeah.
Yep.
So I like that.
I don't always agree with how he feels about the politics stuff of it, but anyways, we got about 30 seconds. But other than that, yeah, I think he's on to something. He'd be great to get on the show if you could get him.
Oh man, that would be like getting a
Jimmy,
superstar.
Yeah, well, I got you. Come on now. Here's your countdown, Jack. 5,
okay.
4, 3, 2, 1, and you're back live and on the radio side right now.
Welcome back, everybody, to Paranormal Intelligence Agency Radio Live. I'm your host, Jack Carey. I've got a face for milk cartons and a voice for smell-o-vision, and tonight we're talking about the crazy world of canine cryptids. So that's our main topic. We were having a very good discussion on the weaponization of UFO technology along with the shape-shifting aspect of the phenomenon itself. And I'll add, before we turn our attention to the cryptid world, one little interesting tidbit that seems to be a connection to all of that, and that is that Gary Nolan reported, Dr. Gary Nolan, the scientist I previously mentioned as studying the brain damage in UFO witnesses, he recounted that he has a family of eyewitnesses that were all riding together in some kind of a station wagon-like car. This car had a see-through roof on it, and they were driving down a remote stretch of road, of course, as you might imagine, and they were approached by a UFO. The UFO actually caused apotheum effects in the car. Apotheum effects are things like changing the time on the clock and the radio station and missing time and that kind of thing. Those are apotheum effects, things that seem almost magical about this phenomenon. And what's interesting is that everybody in the car, and there were like 5 of them, reported seeing a massive craft fly over the car, right? Except for one witness. One witness in the car, 1 out of the 5, didn't see that at all. What they saw was a tiny little orb of light go over the car. And that might be an indication, a view behind the curtain of the real phenomenon. Is this something that is planetary based, pretending to be something else? It's a question I'll leave for you to think about when you go to sleep tonight and are looking for something to dream about. Think about that little interesting tidbit. Is this something that is innate to the planet that is pretending to be something it's not? Well, the crazy world of canine cryptids. That's an interesting topic because I was contemplating this week a few of the cases I had worked on, and what was interesting was that when I started writing down all the various cryptids, there were a ton that are canine based. And there seems to be a big difference between, let's say, the Shura Warrican of Montana fame, the creature that the Native Americans referred to as that which carries away dogs, and which they have a body of in a museum in Montana. An actual body of one of these creatures was actually shot, and it is in a museum in Montana. And nobody knows what it is. It appears to have been a species maybe that was coming down from Canada. Kind of looks to me, when you look at the pictures of it, like a canine-headed razorback. You know what a razorback is? Because I grew up in the South, and those woods are full of them, right? big tusk on those pigs, and they can weigh hundreds of pounds, and they are vicious when they come out. Like little torpedoes, they'll come right at you. And this thing kind of looked like a weird version of that with a canine head on it. You can find it online, pictures of the Sharawarkan, and it is an interesting animal to behold. But then my attention turned to the South Texas chupacabra. Here we have a completely different canine cryptid, right? The chupacabra, of course, means, in Mexican it means goat sucker, and many of them have literally exsanguinated their victims. That's what's interesting about this new species of canine, is that there's a veterinarian in Texas who actually has the body of one of these chupacabras, and they were able to, fully dissect this thing and look at it. And it is a insane animal to look at. It really is. It looks like something out of a laboratory experiment of some kind. And so it's interesting that it even exists, much less appears to have the ability to suck the blood out of its victims. It doesn't eat the meat. Anybody who knows anything about biology knows that there's only one other animal on the planet that can exist that way, and that's the vampire bat. And it took the vampire bat eons of time to evolve a system by which it can get by or exist solely on the blood of other animals. How do we explain a newly emergent canine species that appears to have popped into existence out of nowhere and has the same evolved ability to live off of blood the way a vampire bat does? It's a good question. And on top of that, you have the early chupacabras sightings and witness sketches and reports, and they don't look like a canine at all. That creature looks like a flying gray alien with spikes down its back, bat wings, and stuff like that. It's crazy. So, you have the Sharawarkan historical cryptid. You have the chupacabra of South Texas and, of course, of South America. And my good friend Ken Gerhard, who might be listening out there, will tell you that from his travels down to South America, he was able to discover that chupacabra is kind of a catch-all term for any cryptid, weirdo, paranormal-like animal. So it could be that's why you have those early depictions of an animal that may be completely different than the so-called chupacabra that's found in South Texas. So we also have a report coming out of Skinwalker Ranch and the scientists that are there that they were able to recover the fleshy body of a dire wolf that died on the ranch. Dire wolves haven't been around for thousands and thousands of years, and wolves, period, aren't found in the Uinta Basin. Yet, at Skinwalker Ranch, we are constantly reminded, because of their sightings, of the fact that these wolf-like creatures have been seen on that ranch time and time again, even attacking cattle at one point. So that is very interesting stuff. The dire wolf, of course, has also been reported by some hunters in the really vast distances and forest of Alaska. They weren't able to document these creatures. They were seen from a helicopter, but they were huge, huge wolves running in packs. So, very interesting. It could be, and scientists are speculating, that Skinwalker Ranch has an interdimensional portal on it. Could it be that these animals are somehow manifesting out of that interdimensional portal? And could it be that cryptid animals, period, UFO phenomenon? There is stop UFO reported around most cryptid activity. And I don't mean animals like the emergent chupacabra, but I definitely mean animals like the dogman and Sasquatch and all of the main creatures that we examine in cryptozoology world. All of those have a accompanying array of UFO type activity that seems to go along with them. And the scientists at the Pentagon are studying what they call the hitchhiker effect, which is a wide array of paranormal activity that seems to, well, it seems to piggyback the UFO phenomenon. And that's interesting because I'm having to plug in my computer system here, Mark, so bear with me for a second. But the piggybacking is really interesting because even in cases like the farmer that's near the Beast of Bray Road has reported time and time again that he, who has seen the Beast of Bray Road many times, is also seeing UFO activity nonstop accompanying the Beast of Bray Road. So what are we to make of that kind of stuff? Could it be that these cryptid animals are a kind of like avatar, if you will, for the phenomenon itself? Are they able to traverse like the landscape in such a way that the aliens can't, and they're scary enough nobody bothers them? And we have to entertain all kinds of exotic theories when we talk about things like Dogman. But so you have creatures that seem commonplace in our biological world, like the Sherrowurk, like the chupacabra of South Texas, like the dire wolf. And then, of course, you have the woo animals. And the woo animals are an interesting topic because that has to do with, of course, Dogman. And Dogman's an interesting topic because there is a vast amount of ancient lore about dog-headed, human-bodied creatures. Or, basically having the body of a upright walking bipedal creature. Excuse me. Even the late great Marco Polo reported having run into a place that he referred to as cynocephaly. You can find that online. And cynocephaly was supposed to be an island that was completely peopled with dog-headed creatures, and they openly traded with them. That's fascinating. What are we to make of that kind of historical tale, right? And then you have all the way to modern day times, the breaking of the story of the Beast of Bray Road by the great Linda Godfrey. And Linda Godfrey reported in her book, Real Wolfmen of North America, that she was contacted by a man who worked for the CIA as a remote viewer. And that this gentleman relayed to her that they had, in fact, done remote viewings on the Dogman phenomenon and mystery, and that they were able to determine that these creatures were somehow constructed. They were chimeras constructed by an alien intelligence. that they wore a type of bio armor under their fur. It was literally engineered into them, right? That they also possessed a kind of technology, these little spheres that they carry around, these black balls, and these black spheres allow them to project themselves from one area to another. That's interesting because in the book, Skinwalkers at the Pentagon, Dr. Colm Kelleher and the other scientists involved investigating the hitchhiker effect recount that Dogman encounter was part of the hitchhiker effect. That one of the intelligence agents working at Skinwalker Ranch had a Dogman encounter occur on their property 1,000 miles away in Virginia. How are we to make any logical sense of how that is able to take place? We were just told by the CIA to Linda Godfrey that, in fact, these creatures are able to project themselves using a type of alien technology they possess. Did this thing project itself somehow to this intelligence agent's property while he was still at Skinwalker Ranch in order to menace the family? I don't know the answer to that, but it's a question we have to ask. And on top of that, you have the farmer that owns the land all along Bray Road who has seen these Dogman creatures, right? And he hides cameras in his fields. And what does he pick up? He picks up UFO activity. Then he picks up tracks of the creature. He tries to bait the creature. He has sightings of the creature. He tries to bait it with the carcass of a dead deer. And what happens right in front of the camera? A fog forms in the middle of the field. The fog is thick and it slowly makes its way over the carcass of the deer, and then it begins to dissipate. And when it dissipates, the carcass is gone. All of that has to be part of the same phenomenon. All of it. There's no way there just randomly is a Dogman running around in an area that has nonstop UFO activity, cattle mutilations, huge canine prints being left, and it all not be related in some way, shape, or form. That, my friends, is the hitchhiker effect. And it's something I've experienced on a personal level. We once investigated a Dogman encounter in the suburbs of Denver, Colorado, in a place called Lakewood, and it was known as the Lakewood Lichen case. And in this particular case, we were able to identify a natural occurring woodland area that this could have made it from the mountains down into this neighborhood. But this gentleman went out with a sick dog in an affluent neighborhood with a walled backyard. And while he's there with his sick dog at 3 a.m., he hears a noise. He turns to look, and there is a Dogman in his yard. It turns and looks at him. It takes 3 bounds and makes it over a 10-foot brick wall in a single bound. That would be interesting given the fact that this gentleman wanted absolutely no publicity whatsoever, was very reticent to tell a story, and he was a graphic artist. He was able to draw us amazing pictures of what he saw. He then really kind of sold all of his possessions and went on a worldwide kind of sabbatical. And that's really been the key for finding, well, it's the key to knowing that you found somebody who's actually experienced something truly paranormal, because often they will go on to make profound life changes. And that's what occurred to this gentleman. It just so happens a few weeks after that, a young couple reported seeing running across the highway very nearby a upright running dog-headed creature that bounded up into the mountains. Interesting. So, what are we to make of this hitchhiker connection to the UFO phenomenon, the Dogman connection to the UFO phenomenon, and even though this is about canine cryptids, the Sasquatch connection to the UFO phenomenon? How is it that all of those things are connected to the UFO phenomenon in some way, shape, or form? And with Sasquatch, I mean at least 20% of all credible Bigfoot or Sasquatch encounters involve the witness seeing a UFO in the sky at the time. That's a big number, guys. That's a big number, and the witnesses are every bit as sincere as the ones who report seeing a Sasquatch without a UFO nearby. You can actually take UFO and Bigfoot sightings and lay them on a map. You can do it even today. I've done it many times. Take a nearby or the closest Bigfoot report that you can find and mark it on a map. And I guarantee you, sooner or later, an article will appear about a UFO sighting in that same area. It happens time and time and time again. It was the late, great Jonathan Keel of Mothman Prophecy fame who discovered that statistic about 20% of the UFO and Bigfoot sightings taking place together. So then you have the alien abductee phenomenon, and what did they report? The same thing, cryptid animals being in the presence of these alien creatures and of their craft. It is the craziest mystery, and people thought cryptozoology was just about identifying unknown species that occur naturally in our biological sphere, and it's actually anything but that. The heart of cryptozoology today is in trying to ascertain the difference between the cryptid animals that are naturally occurring on this planet and the ones that are either interdimensional and or have a UFO connection to them. So that is really kind of where we're stuck in the cryptozoology world. And until we're able to kind of turn that corner to ascertain exactly which are which, we're not going to be able to invent metrics, tools by which to measure the phenomenon. And it's only through the measurement of the phenomenon that we can have a scientific understanding of what it is we're really dealing with. So this whole thing seems to have a shape-shifting aspect to it, right? And you have also in the cryptozoology world, the world of shapeshifters. And often these creatures are said to shapeshift into canine species. Then you have things that are completely different and that are reported, like devil dogs. The so-called devil dogs have been reported many times, and they appear to have some kind of spiritual connection to them, coming from the ghostly realm, if you will, and manifesting in our reality to wreak havoc for a while before they disappear again into the ghostly realm. That's something that has happened around the world, particularly in England and Ireland and the UK period. So, and then we have what appears to be a very strange lineage of people on this planet that have the genes, the DNA, the ability to maybe not even control it, but to shift into a canine-like creature. And I'm talking about the werewolf phenomenon. And yeah, there have been real cases of werewolves reported. They appear to be very sparsely reported, but all of the cases I've investigated dealing with actual werewolves appears to indicate to me that all of them come from bloodlines that go back to old Europe. One in particular that I'm aware of had roots going back to ancient Romania. I'm not sure where that leads us in the werewolf phenomenon, but they all seem to have a lineage going back to that area of Europe, which is very interesting to me. And next week, you'll have to join us. We will be examining yet another crazy rabbit hole on this show. We examine the architecture of the rabbit hole. We don't claim to have any hard and fast, completely true answers, but it's in the examination of all of the architecture around us in each of these rabbit holes that we will find that truth. And join me next week, and we'll examine another paranormal mystery. And until then, I will see you on the radio.